Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got new updates regarding Israel Iran. There has been the mega long shot over the past few days after the initial strikes by Israel of maybe Iran wanting to come to the negotiating table. They're denying it. Trump denied leaving the G7 summit to possibly negotiate a ceasefire. That's what Macron said. Trump said, no, he's lying. And now we're getting reports that Trump said he may allow Iran to come to the White House to negotiate. Now, I did see a few different responses from Iran saying, no, this is not happening. We're not going to be doing that. We're not satisfied. We're extremely upset with the way Trump has talked about the situation and supporting Israel. Trump now says he's talking to Netanyahu daily and he supports the strikes by Israel. They're going back and forth still as the United States kind of, sort of, is maybe trying to negotiate. Israel does not want that. They do not want a ceasefire at all. If you talk to any American Zionists, they want, this is their window, this is their time, with Hezbollah, with Hamas, with the Houthis all weakened. This is their time to go after Iran, but they cannot go after Iran by themselves. They need U.S. heavy weaponry, the B-2 bombers, especially for Fordo, the extremely critical enrichment center that's located within the side of a mountain and underneath the mountain that only the heavy payloaded B-2 bombers could reach. And so that's where we're at right now in terms of, will Trump allow this? Is this just for show? Is maybe the potential of this being a maximum pressure technique by the administration, the Trump administration, to send all of the heavy weaponry to the Middle East, get it ready, tweet out, say, everyone leave Tehran, it's going to be terrible? Is that just all complete pressure to get the best possible deal? If it is a nuclear deal, I don't even know what that looks like, because Trump keeps repeating Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb, which means they cannot have any enrichment. Now, maybe they would be able to sign on to some type of regional nuclear pact in terms of creating civilian nuclear energy, but it was also reported that Iran was willing to be more flexible after the initial Israeli strikes of maybe going down to 2%, 3% enrichment in terms of just civilian use. You get over like 3.7%, you get over 5%, then you're starting to talk about getting into the nuclear grade, which is once you get up to 90%. Obviously, if they're at 60%, they're enriching to make it nuclear. And there's some other stuff here with Trump talking with Tucker Carlson. There was a little bit of a break with Carlson, and we saw the writing on the wall in terms of the Israel question and just the, would the United States support Israel in this? Would it get to the point to where we're going to some type of boots on the ground war? Obviously not. Trump has made it known today that this is not going to be some drawn out thing. Now, you can say that, and then in terms of the military actions, maybe something else happens, but Trump knows that it's not an answer. There's no answer in terms of a prolonged Middle Eastern war. So what I've seen is a lot of people saying, well, we're going to get in, get out, and it's going to be just like that. We're going to strike the nuclear facilities. It's going to be strategic. It's going to be targeted. Maybe some areas in Tehran that are used by the government. And then supposedly we're going to try and get Iran on their knees to make a deal, which Trump says is unconditional surrender. Israel wants the regime change. Netanyahu has said now they want the regime change. They think it would be good. And so they're trying to put a lot of the citizens within Iran, who many of them do not like the current regime, they're trying to put them in a position to create some type of revolution to beckon in a regime change. And so that's where we're at right now in terms of this negotiation. Does Iran even want to do it? It seems like they don't, but Trump is saying, well, maybe they can come to the White House. We've got this clip with Tucker Carlson. It was really big where Carlson came out in a tweet and said Trump has to stay away from this. This is major. This could sink the administration. I do think people are taking it a little bit too far in terms of it's not necessarily one or the other, and you could call this cope or whatever, but it's not like there's only two options in terms of doing nothing versus an extended multi-year war in the Middle East in which we're propping up Israel and we've got boots on the ground and it costs billions and billions and billions of dollars. There's a potential middle avenue to strategically strike Iran and end it extremely quickly. Trump has said he wants it done quickly. He wants it over. And with Trump's rhetoric in the, since he started his political career in 2015, he's been anti-war. You go back to his tweets, famously in 2011, he said Obama was going to start a war with Iran. If you look at his shift in his demeanor and the way he's talking about Israel now versus 2 months ago, people are starting to question, is there a little bit more to the story here in terms of Trump possibly being undermined, and maybe there's something like blackmail or something. I mean, because Trump's rhetoric on Israel has changed completely, because we were able to spin the narrative that, well, Trump was standing up to Israel. You look at the deal he cut with the Houthis, you look at the relationship he had with Saudi Arabia, and you look at even something as small as the tariffs on Israel, which they viewed as very disrespectful. Netanyahu, within the week or within the next few days, came to the White House. Trump said, no, you already get $4 billion every year from us. We're not. So there's all of this. And then on top of that, we get the news back around March that Israel wanted to go on an offensive joint strike against Iran, and Trump said no. And many people within the cabinet also said, no, we're not doing that. We're going to do diplomacy. But then recently it's like, and they tried swinging it like, oh, it's day 61, so this was all planned by Trump and Netanyahu, but many people are not buying that, because there were supposed to be more talks, and you could say, well, that was lulling Iran to sleep, and it did work because the initial Israeli strikes were extremely successful on Iran. And the point is, it just seems like there's been a major shift by Trump within the last month or so, whether or not they're saying, oh, it was all orchestrated. They tried to come to an agreement with Iran on some type of nuclear deal, which, I mean, it wouldn't even be classified as a nuclear deal, because Trump said there's going to be no uranium enrichment at all. And he said that's the only deal we'll accept. And now maybe with Iran's backs up against the wall, with the U.S. readying their B-2 bombers with maximum pressure applied to Iran, they will agree to something. But it seems very unlikely at this point. And then them coming to the White House, I don't know about that, but you've got this. Let's take a look at this spat between Carlson and Trump. And Trump said he had a chance to talk to Tucker over the past few days. There's been some tough developments in terms of Trump really pushing back against some of these anti-war people. And we understand that it's not one or the other. There is the potential of a middle route to where you can do strikes quickly. It's done. It's dusted. You don't technically have this as a war. Israel and Iran haven't declared war on each other. If it's over in a week and there's a ceasefire, you can live with it. Trump knows it can't be prolonged, and I think a lot of these people are just immediately thinking 2003 Iraq. They're thinking of Afghanistan. It's a terrible taste, and they're thinking of this fear-mongering of a nuclear weapon, which it's hard to take seriously because of the past statements by Netanyahu dating back to the 90s saying Iran is 6 weeks away from a nuclear bomb. But I'll agree, if the enrichment is 60%, yes, they're very close to having a capable nuclear weapon. But we know the Tulsi Gabbard intelligence said in March they're not actively going for a nuclear bomb. You cannot believe that. You can believe it. There's Tulsi apparently was meeting with Trump. She was in the Situation Room yesterday. There's another meeting today. We'll see what all of this is. Let me play this, though. This is Trump today.
And it's interesting because I did ask Tucker, I said, well, are you okay with nuclear weapons being in the hands of Iran? And he sort of didn't like that. He didn't want to really, but he sort of didn't like that. And I said, well, if it's okay with you, then you and I do have a difference. But it's really not okay with him. Therefore, you may have to fight. And maybe it'll end, and maybe it'll end very quickly. But there's no way that you can allow, whether you have to fight or not, you can allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, because the entire world will blow up. I'm not going to let that happen.
Mr. President, you had a bit of a...
Right, so Trump is repeating, it's saying the entire world would blow up if Iran has a nuclear weapon. That's exaggerating it, obviously. But, I guess it's good to see Trump and Tucker talk about it in terms of, well, what if they have a nuclear weapon? I wonder what Tucker actually responded with, possibly saying, well, that we've been told they have a nuclear weapon for the last 30 years. And, yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of fear-mongering. Trump just said he will be meeting in the Situation Room on the conflict in an hour, has not made a final decision yet. That's in reference to the potential strikes on Iran with the help of Israel. So he's referencing he hasn't made a decision on potentially entering this conflict. Iranian government planes reportedly land over Oman, where U.S.-Iran talks have been taking place. Is it time for a last-minute deal? Well, I mean, yes, that would be amazing if we could get some type of ceasefire. And you know that people are divided within the Republic. I mean, this is what happens with these situations in the Middle East. Not everyone's interests are going to align. So there's a lot of people within the Republican Party that they do want Iran destroyed because they, whether they are Zionists or whether they support Israel to the extreme, they're going to want that. And then there's the other people that say, well, it's been enough appeasement for Israel, and we would just I mean, you could walk out of here with a very, very good nuclear deal, full diplomacy on display by Trump, a way better deal than the one Obama had, I'm sure now, considering there's more pressure on Iran. I think they probably could have done a better deal even without the Israeli strikes, although I don't know exactly what Iran was offering. You could argue Iran was likely not in the negotiating mood at really any point during these talks because Trump ripped up the original nuclear deal that they had signed. But you can't really trust Iran in terms of what they're saying in terms of their levels of uranium enrichment, obviously. So it's multifaceted, it's very complex, and it seems like this is kind of a Hail Mary last ditch effort. And it was reported that Witkoff and Vance and Trump potentially were looking to have a meeting. That was reported on Monday that it was going to be later this week. So whether that's today or tomorrow, whether that's has any relation to these Iranian Airbus jets going to the meeting place where they've had previous talks, I don't know. You can only just read into it and speculate. And hopefully, if it is a strike, hopefully the strike. I mean, you got Polymarket now. The strike odds are at about 80% chance. There's going to be a U.S. strike, likely on, I would say, Fordo, which is the nuclear enrichment facility they've been talking about hitting in the mountain that Israel needs the U.S. for. But Israel has obviously grander plans. They want the regime change, and so there'd have to be even more. And there's going to be return fire. We know this. Iran is going to hit U.S. military bases in Iraq. If this happens, they may end up closing the Strait of Hormuz. If they end up doing that, some people say they don't even have the capacity to do it, but they start sinking ships. There's going to be a huge disruption in terms of the price of oil. $150, that's a bit of fear-mongering, I think. But there's going to be a disruption. What is it sitting at $73? You're looking at $110, $120. Remember, during the Russia invasion of Ukraine, we got up to about $100, $120 in terms of oil prices. That's not going to be good for the U.S. economy. It's just not. I mean, so this is something that Trump has to understand. I mean, the other thing is we've been really babying this economy along, and it doesn't help that the Fed will not cooperate with the rate cuts, and they're going to have to try and remove Powell. I mean, you talk to some of these people, they say they're not going to cut rates at all this year. It's become 100% political. Powell hates Trump. The Fed cut in last September because they wanted Harris to win. And technically, Trump cannot personally just say, okay, Powell, you're removed, but he can put political pressure. They're going to have to remove him. I don't see another option. I mean, it is complete partisan in terms of every single metric we're looking at. The only thing they can say is, well, they don't have trade deals. But the problem is when Trump does the trade deals, they're going to make up something else that they don't have. It's this merry-go-round thing with the Fed and the lack of rate cuts with inflation now well under control for 3 months at this point, and under the estimates the past really every month since Trump's been in. So it's concerning. They're going to have to try and get rid of Powell. That's really the only way they're going to get these rate cuts, I think, probably in 2025 at all. Originally, I was optimistic for a September cut, maybe even a what is it, July 30th cut. But you talk to some people, it's looking like it's not going to happen with Powell, and maybe that changes. We'll have to see. But also, you're going to have to deal with the effects of the slight crude oil increase as well. Not that it's going to have anything major. If you do some type of ceasefire, this is easily. I mean, crude oil is only at $73. It's not a problem. But if this escalates, if it escalates, and Trump is saying, well, the red line is it's not going to be prolonged, and obviously there's going to be no ground fighting. So that's the red line. Trump is saying, well, it needs to be quick. And once we do these strikes, they're going to return, but they're going to be forced into negotiations. I mean, Israel, on their first initial preemptive strikes, killed important key members within the Iranian government and important nuclear scientists. So it's not like Iran is doing well right now. And you imagine the catastrophic effect of more strikes into a regime that's already not liked by their citizens. Now you're getting the ingredients of where there's a potential for a regime change. And you know what? They're really high off of the Syrian regime change, which seems like the Syrian government, at least right now, who knows, the next 5 or 6 years, right now is more pro-Israel. So they're like, well, look at that. We could do that in Iran. And so we will have to see how it develops. But I think Trump is saying, well, if it's going to happen, it's going to be quick. There's this report, maybe there's a last second chance of negotiations. A lot of people don't want the negotiations. They want the U.S. to strike. I think it would be these negotiations to avoid any crazy oil spikes and to avoid anything. These negotiations where you've got Iran in such a corner to where you can really pitch. And you could, I mean, I don't know if Iran would agree to at this point, especially considering they just got struck preemptively by Israel, they would ever agree to 0% enrichment. I mean, unless they were on the verge of just completely collapsing and the regime thought the only way we can save face is by avoiding this U.S. strike with all of the bombers and all of the refuelers moving into the Middle Eastern area. It's like 10% of the total U.S. Air Force fleet of refuelers in the area now. It's just insane within Europe. So this is something that we're going to have to watch, and we'll have to see. And we'll have to see. I mean, Trump's decision is probably going to come within the next few days. But guys, make sure you like this video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.